Hey, what's up? It's your boy BC Beta, and welcome back to the Betascape podcast. I am so excited to bring you today's episode because I have a very wonderful, special, gorgeous guest to talk about masturbation and other sexy, amazing things. Before we do that, I want to say that will be using explicit language and talking about explicit material. And we're not licensed medical professionals. We just talk about our experiences in our lives and hope that you guys can relate. Yes? Cool. Without further ado, I want to introduce my very special and sexy guest who comes from us all the way from, wait, where did you're in Savannah, Georgia?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. The wonderful Pretty Piggy. welcome to
Hey,
welcome to the Betascape.
hey, thanks. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yes. I feel like it's gonna be like an ongoing thing on this show. It's nice.
It better be.
Pretty Piggy's on the Bait Escape tonight, and his Twitter handle, you can go follow his gorgeous Twitter, is Prettypiggy19. I'm curious why the 19.
Oh, I think it was something like Pretty Piggy was already taken, and I just like the number 19. I don't know.
Oh,
That's,
okay.
yeah, I think that's it.
That's cool. I mean, we love
Random ass numbers.
exactly. So,
I
um,
think 19 is like the last prime number, isn't it? I don't know much about math, but
oh, you're asking the wrong guy.
okay, well, let's pretend it is, because that would be fierce.
It could be whatever you want it to be. It could be like your lucky beta number.
Yeah, I like to think 19 is my lucky number.
Perfect. I love
Yeah.
it. You love it. I think all the bros are gonna love it. Very cool. So again, thank you so much for joining me tonight. How's your day been? Let me ask you how you are.
My day's been pretty good. I got a lot done around the house early on and then went to work and then came home, got myself together, and now I'm chatting with you. So, been pretty good so far.
That took a really nice day. I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like I had like a similar day. I was like at work. I was like doing a bunch of shit, and then I came here and I'm like talking to you, which I looked
Nice.
forward to because we had been talking and texting, and like I was like, oh, I really want to get to know this bro, and I was like, I should just probably invite him on the podcast. And I was like, what a perfect opportunity to do that.
Hell yeah.
I don't remember who shouted who up. I think I hit you on your DMs. And I was just like, yo, I really love your Twitter. Because when I first started out, I was just like kind of like navigating my way around that Twitter landscape full of like gorgeous men. And obviously you were one of them. I'm just gonna hype you up this entire episode. And I was just like, yo, this guy is cool. Like you were just like legit. Like I loved your aesthetic, which is what I want to talk about because I told you that you had a cool aesthetic, right?
Yeah. And thank you.
Yeah, and that you were super vintage. Like you reminded me like a '70s porn star. Is that deliberate? What's up with
Um,
the look?
I'm definitely attracted to that aesthetic. I wouldn't I don't I feel like in certain ways I do deliberately like aestheticize the things that I post, but not necessarily I'm not thinking like, oh, I'm gonna put out like this 70s porno look. Like that's something I'm attracted to and I feel sexy when I feel I guess kind of vintage and stuff. And
Yeah,
honestly, like in my day-to-day life and the things that I like to wear and listen to, I do tend to go towards a vintage aesthetic, like whether it be 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever.
hmm
But yeah, that's kind of like a yes and no.
no, it's hot. I mean, it's like I feel like it's talent. I mean, you're not deliberately doing these things, and like you're just like innately that. But I've told you this before because we were chatting or texting, and I was asking you how you were, and you were just like, "Yeah, I just scrubbed my floors really hard and made my body feel a certain way," and it just caught me so off guard. And I was like, I want to be like that."
Dude, move into a place with some dirty ass tiles and get to it.
Yes, I could do that also too. But I was in, and I told you this. I was like, you inspire me a lot because I'm learning to do that with myself. Like I'm learning to be more in tune with my own body, my own sexual like
Mm,
energy. But when I
mm.
look at your Twitter and when we vibe, like you're just all sex. Does that make sense?
Oh, cool. Yeah, thanks. It does.
Yeah. So I think like you're just a particular like when I started following your Twitter, like I didn't even know that you would call yourself a baiter. And we talked, you do call yourself like you
True.
yeah.
Yes. I do call
Um
myself a creator. I think even now I haven't put it in like my Twitter handle or anything, but I definitely am a baiter.
yeah. So then I was like I didn't so that's why I hesitated to approach you because I was like, oh, he's probably just like, a gorgeous porn star. Um but then I just saw your Twitter feed and I was like, oh, it's all solo. I think it'd be really cool to chat with this dude. But
Cool.
have you always been that way with your body? Like, have you always had like a good awareness of like your sexuality and how that like translates to people?
No, I don't think so. I think, I mean, I think in this past year, I've been having this kind of internal sexual revolution and external, like showing off with people. I've known for a while, like probably since I was a teenager, that I like to show off.
Mm,
It turns me on when people are looking at my naked body. Like when I feel sexy, I like for other people to engage with that and watch that and stuff. Um, but no, like it would be in December. It will have been a year since I made like my sexy Twitter,
yeah.
and that's really the first time that I've like shared this much of my sex. And I
When
think that no, go ahead. That's pretty
I
much
was gonna
it.
ask, I was like, when did you start your OnlyFans?
That's a good question. I was just thinking about that earlier. I think it was in April-ish. It was definitely during quarantine,
Quarantine. Yeah, that made
like
sense.
during like early COVID. Yeah. Yeah, it was. And initially I held off honestly because I felt like, I realized this is going to be a time when OnlyFans is going to be oversaturated, and there's a lot of people that use that as like their main income, and that wasn't the case for me. But then eventually I was like, you know what? I can use this to make money and then redistribute that to like people who need it more than I do.
Oh,
Because
that's
like during COVID,
yeah, that's
yeah, I
great.
mean, I was super lucky with COVID. Like my day job is like I work as a restaurant. I work at a restaurant, and I was really lucky in that my employer like put all of us through unemployment and stuff. So I was able to make money while not at work.
Yeah.
So then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make people pay for my hottest content and give that back to people that don't have a job right now.
It's such a wonderful thing for you to do. Like seriously. It's such
Thanks.
a giving thing and it's so generous of you. And I feel like it goes with your entire vibe because like if you're generous with your body, you're generous with your money. I don't know.
I
you're,
hope
just,
so.
you're just general. You're just
Everyone needs that.
yeah. No, that's cool. I totally fucks with that.
Thanks, too.
um, so curious to know what's the baiter scene in Georgia like? I've never been in Savannah, Georgia. I think you were just like, come on over, I'll show you a good time. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm on my way.
Yeah, you would love my friends. To be honest, like I said, in the past year, this is really when I'm understanding like sexual things about myself and like identifying myself as a baiter and as like a solo sexual.
Mm,
So I'm not honestly on the apps. Like I'm not really on Grinder or Scruff, or anything like that. I do know like a couple of my closest gay guy friends are, and like I'm sure a couple of them identify themselves as baiters, but like I don't necessarily have that much interpersonal relationship with other baiters in Savannah or in Georgia. Um,
mm.
yeah, I know they're out there.
you
There's
know,
baiters everywhere, but I'm like,
yeah.
since it's a newer thing for me,
Yeah.
And since I'm not really like on the apps,
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
So when did you like when did you start feeling like you were solosexual? I'm interested to ask that question because I feel like it happens in every dude's life. Like if you identify solosexual, there comes a moment in your life where you're just like, hey, this is different and this is what it is.
Yeah, super recently, I think. I don't know. I think for years I've had sex that was fine. Like, partnered sex where it's like, okay, this is cool. Usually like one-time hookups or whatever, but not necessarily satisfying, or like I wouldn't get off, which is fine because like I still love connecting with people and their bodies, and like it was always sexy, and sometimes I would like jerk off thinking about it afterwards. But it's not until probably in the past few months, especially like listening to your podcast, that I was like, oh, solo sexuality is a thing. And I have a lot of sex with myself, like, oh, duh, like I'm a solosexual. Which, and you say this a lot, it like that doesn't mean that I only enjoy sex with myself, but that's like more than 90% of the sex that I have is like by myself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really cool perspective on it because I feel like my journey I feel like has been like I've always had this inclination more towards masturbatory sex, like even when I was younger, and I just kind of grew up just enjoying that more. But it's always interesting to me to get all these different responses to that because it can be like this thing that just happened, or like it's been with me since this age, or depending on when your age. Um, I get a lot of older solosexuals contacting me and stuff like that about when it started for them. Um,
Yeah, that's what's exciting about it for me. And also, like, given that I've only been expressing my sexuality like in such a public manner for like less than a year, because
yeah,
the more that I show, and like the more that I share and the more that I exhibit, I'm like, oh, like it inspires me to do more and different things that maybe I hadn't thought about to do with myself or with other people.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so yeah, it's exciting. I like thinking about it and doing it.
Well, that's good. I know a lot of our brothers would be super appreciative of that. Um, I was gonna ask you about. I was trying to pose a question, but like, do you ever feel like solo sexuality can kind of get misinterpreted as us being like lonely people?
I
Um,
do.
yeah, because I was curious because my friend was asking me, she's like, "Oh, like even though you're solo, you want like a relationship, right?" And I was like, "Oh, like I didn't know if I like miscommunicated like what solo sexuality was, but I was interested to know because they hear the word solo, they just think alone.
Right.
Yeah, which is not
Yeah.
true.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think it could be misinterpreted a lot. Again, like me being somebody who has only recently identified as solosexual, like I haven't told that many people about it. Like I've told a couple of my close friends, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really into like having sex with myself. And luckily with them, they're like, they kind of get it, and it's usually over drinks or something. We're hanging out and it's like, oh yeah, like this is what my sex is like, and it's cool, and like I share it online and stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds fun, like all about it. But yeah, I think as far as sexuality goes, a lot of people just think like, oh, heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, pansexual, and or asexual, and maybe solo sexuality isn't much in that mix. And people definitely feel very comfortable like putting all these terms into a specific box.
Yeah,
And I think you're right. It's like people hear solo and they're like, oh, you only have sex with yourself, or like you're only interested in being alone. And like, don't get me wrong, like I do like being alone and I do like having sex by myself, but it's also really fun to share those experiences I've had with myself, or like practice things on myself to like share with other people. So
yeah, I think that's true too. I think all of that's true. I definitely have. I've taken that approach with my own like sexuality. Like I've like, oh, like I'm gonna take this time out for myself to really understand what gets me off. And then I'll be able
Mm,
to like effectively communicate that to a partner and say, hey,
yes,
this is the shit that really gets me. Oh, I know this because I've been practicing on myself for a while now. Right? It makes sense.
right. It's hot.
Yeah, it is hot.
It's
Um,
hot.
but I think again, like I'm always trying to make make the point that soul sexuality doesn't necessarily mean that you're alone. Often it can get lonely because you are having the sex by yourself. And I think now too it's even more important because I mean, I think as beaters we're doing fine under quarantine. It's like everyone else that's having a problem because everyone's kind of seeking out these like avenues of sex to have. But I've been like encouraging my friends and my bros now. I'm just like, dude, chill the fuck out. Like take this perfect opportunity to like get to know yourself.
Yeah, get a new toy. Like do I don't know, get some new lubes, like get some candles and lighting, like practice things. I don't know, there's so many different ways to masturbate. Like there's so many ways. There are endless ways to pleasure yourself.
Yeah, and I think that I tell my friends all the time, like I think that's you have to have like responsibility and like obtaining that. Like you have to make a conscious choice. Like it's not like something that's like gonna happen on its own. Um, but I'm just like, yeah, you dudes are fucking solo sexuals now. It's like you guys are getting laid, dude. Like it's not a problem. It's not like that big of a deal. The label doesn't even matter.
True.
Um, have you ever been to LA?
Yes, I was in LA last summer for like a little, like it might have been a week. I don't know. It went by so fast.
I feel like you would really like LA. Like I feel like you should come over, like explore like the bait scene here. I think you would really have fun with the bros.
Yeah, it sounds great. I'd love to.
um, I was writing this piece for, well, I don't want to jinx it. I was writing this piece for like a major like publication, well, online publication, and I started going back to history of like when I first not knew that I was gay, but I was first obsessed with penis. I don't know. Do you remember when that happened to you? Because I have like a kind of a fake memory that's
Oh yeah. Yes. So early on. So early on.
and I'm curious to know because you're so playful in your sex and you're so like you're I would consider you like an exhibitionist, right? Like
Totally.
I'm
Yeah.
always so curious to know when that begins. Like as a child, are you like hyper aware of like sexual things about yourself and others, or is that just because does that come later in life? Like
That's a good question. I feel like for me, I don't know, I've been like hyper interested by sex, like literally like since being a child. I was like, what is sex? Like everybody's talking about sex, all this music is about sex, like what is it? And I was
hmm,
super curious, and so like I looked it up on the internet. Like I grew up with the internet and I looked that shit up, and I was like, oh, this is hot, like this is fun. um
yeah.
and yeah, I guess from that point I was like, well, I've got one of those, I can kind of like I can play with that myself. And yeah, I don't know.
So if you're, let me ask you this: you're familiar with like the soul sexual scene, like the beta community. So like, do you know like the
Right.
different levels of stages of masturbation? I asked you that because like my last episode that I recorded last week, I talked about gooning.
Uh-huh.
Are you into gooning or have you ever gooned?
I'm sure that I have, but I don't feel like I've practiced it enough to like I know that I've been in the gooning stage a number of times in my life, but I feel like I don't um I don't know. I feel like I don't know all of the stages well enough to be like, oh yeah, like yesterday I gooned for like half an hour or what. I don't know. But I know that I have, because I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I've heard people describe it, talk about it.
Yeah.
I did a couple of like sex workshops like online, or like I I like paid to be in a couple of sex workshops early on in quarantine, and like one of them was a guided masturbation thing. It's like, oh yeah, like this is the gooning stage at this point. and
Mm.
like this is how it's going to feel. Like on a level of 1 to 10, you're going to be around like 8, 9, like 9.5 maybe, you know, kind of like losing control and just kind of like getting real into your dick, and like the whole world kind of disappears. So that's my understanding of it. It's
That's
hot.
pretty accurate, dude.
Yeah. And thankfully I had people to describe it and like talk about it. So
Sick.
thank you. That was Daddy Will Tantra. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter
I
or
do. Yeah, yeah,
Instagram.
yeah. I know that guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a cool dude.
Cool dude, super hot.
Yeah, super sexy daddy for sure. I know that you primarily have like solo sex now, but have you and do you enjoy like masturbation only sex with another brother? Like, is that something that you
I
do, or do
do.
you? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I haven't done it very often. I think again, a lot of the sexual encounters I've had with men have kind of been like maybe drunken hookups or just kind of one-time hookups or something. But I've had a couple of great relationships. They may have been very short relationships or whatever, but you know, like somebody where most of our sex would be masturbatory or just non-penetrative, like maybe there'd be some ass eating and some like we've talked about how we're both into like oral stimulation. Like that turns me on so much. I love to do oral things, and I love receiving oral sex wherever it is on my body.
Yeah, dude.
Um, yeah, that's super hot. And I can think of one lover that, oh my god, I miss him so much. He moved away from Savannah recently. Um, but he was just like this hot little firecracker, and we never really had penetrative sex, but we would have a lot of like hot, just kind of like jerking each other off or like 69ing or whatever. Um, and then he would like sleep over, and it would just be like, oh my god, I miss him a lot. But yeah, some
Yeah, that's
hot
cool.
baiters.
Yeah, that's cool. I think what's so amazing about like spader sex is like you're kind of forced to figure out other beautiful ways of being sexually expressive since you're not physically penetrating each other anally, then it just really lends itself
Right.
to being like, hey, okay, well, if we're not gonna fuck each other, what are other things that we can do with each other? And then it becomes like this game of like, well, I like this, and then you like that, and then you can show me what this is, and I've never tried this, and so now you're having this smart dialogue about your wants and your needs, and then in
Yeah.
turn you're like becoming vulnerable with this person,
Mm-hmm.
in which you can have like a great baiter bond. And I think when bros approach me about like, oh, like what's a bond? Like what's a baiter bond? How do I achieve that? How do I go about that? Fundamentally, what you're doing is you're being vulnerable with another human being. And when you're completely in that space, that it's more of an emotional connection. Do you find that that's true?
Yeah, I do. And I think, yeah, like sometimes a bond is very fluid. Like, you know, I wouldn't have necessarily thought about like putting the word bond on like this specific relationship I was just talking about with this like hot lover that I had. But that's very much like we did have very much like a baiter bond. It was the way in which we engaged with each other in vulnerability and in sex and communication. Like that is that is a bond, like that's a bonded relationship that's sacred in a way that's different from a lot of the other relationships I've had, or different from a lot of the other sex that I've had with other people. um yeah, and it did involve a lot of vulnerability, but like I think that word sometimes is very nebulous to people. Like for me, sometimes the word vulnerable can be nebulous, but you know, just like communicating with each other, like talking about how you feel about, or talking about what things actually turn you on, you know, rather than like you were saying with kind of like when you're just fucking somebody in the ass or getting fucked in the ass. It's not like that's just plain sex or whatever, but it's kind of like um it's the expectation. That's what we've kind of all grown up to like view as sex. It's kind of like a, oh, you put this in here and like things happen and that's that. Whereas with like beta sex, like you said, you kind of have to engage on a more communicative level.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that offers up a lot of opportunities for like stronger or more versatile bonds, more creative, exciting bonds, I think.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely 100% correcto. I totally agree. And I think that it's important to have that conversation because, again, I get asked it a lot, and it's not something that can be achieved when it's a forceful. I think
Mm,
men or like bros tend to want to force these bonds. It's kind of like you're a man, I'm a man. Let's just get this together, which can happen. But I don't know. I get the feeling that people just want to dig a little bit deeper, and it's no one's ever really talked about that or like had that conversation to just say like, hey, it's okay if you literally just want to be held, because
mm,
we're men, we're
yeah.
supposed to be this stronger force, but
Ugh.
even when you just say, hey dude, I just want to cuddle with you, is that okay? I can get off on that
Ugh.
it fulfills a lot of my sexual needs.
Yeah, no, I also I identify with that. I also, yeah, but it's important to, say that, like, um because I think you're right. Like we've all, well, I have been brought up in a society in which sex has been surrounded by so much shame. Like any type of sex, any type of our bodies are surrounded by so much shame. And when we learn to have sex, like when we learn to masturbate, um, we keep it very quiet, and like, it's very just by yourself. Like it's not something you share. You don't make a lot of noise and stuff like that. You don't talk about what you're doing. Like you're by yourself.
Yeah.
And then I think that bleeds into our sex lives with other people, like, or our beta bonds with other people. Perhaps like there's we're not used to talking about these things. Talking about these things is extremely exponentially rewarding because you and sometimes I feel like I might not know the thoughts that are in my head, but once I start talking, I'm like, oh yeah, that's actually something that I believe. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's like, yeah, you might be dating with somebody and they're like getting all up on you and something. It's like, oh, actually, like it would be really hot if you just put your legs over my lap or something. Like I I actually don't like it when you're like fully on top of me right now. Like maybe let's just like chill out for a moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's what I'm saying. Like you have to have like you just be that's where brotherhood like mentality comes in, because if you're my bro and I tell you, hey, I don't like you pushing up on me like that, as my bro I'm gonna be like, cool, I'm gonna back off, this is still gonna be chill, we're gonna have a good time because I want us to both have a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like even if your bro tells you not to push up on it, what I don't want to have happen is I don't want people to like internalize that as being like, oh, they don't think I'm sexy anymore, they don't want me
Right.
to be here anymore. Because I think a lot of people get caught up in their head about, oh, like, well, he doesn't even want me touching his dick, so what am I here for? It's like you're there, bro. Like I invited you over here. I want you here for a reason. There's a point to all of this, but I'm gonna communicate to you exactly what I need you to do for me right now. And if you're my bro, it's gonna happen.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Another thing that I found really interesting about your vibe is that, or actually, you know what? Let's take a break.
Cool.
We're gonna take a short break for a sponsor, and then I want to come back and talk to you about your drag queen stuff, if that's
Oh
cool.
my God. Cool. That sounds great.
All right, cool. So we'll be back right after this. Okay, and we're back. Thanks for sticking around for that. Again, I want to mention that we have a special guest with us today speaking about all things masturbation and cool shit. His name is Pretty Piggy on Twitter. He is Prettypiggy19, 1 9, because 19's hot.
Great number. It's the last prime number in the world.
There you go. Is that, I'm gonna Google that after our conversation. We don't want to give you a false impression. But
Yeah, yeah, we're not
I
spreading
believe
any.
you though. I believe you. I feel like you're very educated on the prime numbers for some reason.
There's just I don't know, they're fierce. I don't know. Something about prime numbers is like they can only be divided by themselves in one. That's hot.
Hey, that is hot. Speaking of what's hot, I just pulled up your Instagram for your drag queen um
Miss Lasagna.
persona. Yeah,
Yeah.
where, well, okay, first of all, lasagna entree. That's amazing. How did you come up with
Yeah.
that?
So I had a gig coming up. I was like dabbling in drag, and I was in my first year at college, and I met with somebody who was putting on a show, and they were like, "Hey, you want to be in this show?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I was like, "Shit, I don't have a name." So, so yeah, I was like, you know what, lasagna would be a funny name if I just spelled it phonetically,
Yeah.
and um, and so for a while, it was just lasagna. But the queen in question, who like was putting on the show, was actually Bitch Puddin. I don't know if you know Bitch Puddin. Maybe some of the listeners will know of Bitch Puddin. But um, yeah, so like I don't know. A couple months later, we were texting, and she was like, "I'm the dessert, and you're the entree." And I was like, "Oh my god, that has to be my last name, lasagna entree."
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it was meant to be.
That's that's a great story. I feel like everyone when I feel like when you're a drag queen, it's like in a like a pretty big milestone, right? Like to pick up the correct drag name.
I guess so, but not necessarily. Some people just have names like Catherine Dupree or whatever, which is fine. You know, everybody's name doesn't have to be like some pun or whatever.
That's
Mine is
hot.
honestly, mine is so random. It's just like for whatever reason, it's perfect for me.
Have you ever baited while you're in drag?
Oh my god, that's a great question.
I'm fascinated. Come on now.
I
Well,
feel
see
like
the
I
thing that
never. Yeah.
I'm gonna gas you up right now because the thing that I found super attractive because I just know you as this, right? So when I found you on
Right.
Twitter, I was like, here's this hot, hairy, like 70s disco boy, like, you know, butching it up on Twitter, like being super hot, like exposing this hairy bro hole. And then we got to talking, and then you were just like, oh, you should follow my drag queen Instagram. And I was like, huh? I was like, okay, cool. Like I fuck with it because I like drag. I'm down. And so when I saw it, I was just like, holy shit! Like you're just this duality of a male, which I found super attractive because I was like, oh, he's super mass, but he's also super femme.
Yeah.
Um, which is a cool like thing to achieve. I've never been able to do that. I find it really sexy that you do.
Well, thank you.
Do you find yourself sexy in drag? Is it like a turn on for you? Or is it just like a total job, gig, something to do on the side?
I wouldn't say it's totally a job.
Mm.
It's definitely mostly for me it's like self-expression. It's I the way that I use drag or the way that I connect with drag is I just have like a lot of creative energy, like creative wild silly thoughts, and they crack me up. Like I'm really entertained by the ridiculous shit that my brain stirs up, and I love to share that with people. Again, I think it ties into my own exhibitionism. Like it really makes me excited to share the silly shit that I have going on in my head. Like I might hear a song and think it would be funny to like put this type of visual with it or whatever the case may be. Um, so that's what drag does for me. It doesn't necessarily sexually turn me on. Like it was a great question when you asked have I ever masturbated in drag, because I
Oh
feel like
yeah. Have you?
I I can't think like specifically of a time like where I have, but I feel like also I must have at some point. I've been doing it for a while, so I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like you might have too, but okay, so I'm not sexually attracted to women. I find women beautiful. I can watch women in porn. Like I really enjoy like street porn, like gangbang porn or like orgy porn. Um, but to me, like I'm always on a mission to kind of up my masturbation game, right? So like I'll like masturbate to like this type of porn that I've never seen, or I'll masturbate to like with this bro that I wouldn't typically find attractive, and I just like, well, fuck it, that's a bro, I'm gonna be down. I was just thinking in my head, like, wouldn't it be cool if we like baited together while you were in drag? Like that to me would be like a really great experience, I feel.
Cool.
Because I would know you in these like two different universes, and then like having them combined in one would be just like an experience, right?
Yeah, I've totally thought about like incorporating drag into the stuff that I put online sexually. Again, it's not necessarily something that turns me on, so
That's another question I was going to ask. Do you find a lot of people being turned on by your drag expression? Like, do you think if you put it on your OnlyFans, do you think you'd get a negative response for it?
I don't think I would get a negative response per se. I do think that's kind of a niche thing. I think I mean, people around the world are turned on by drag queens sexually. And I get that and I respect that. Um, but yeah, honestly, for me, it's like it takes a long time to put all that shit on. So I would be charging big bucks for people to like see that
Yeah,
content.
yeah. Well, the only reason I asked is because like I have a lot of conversations with like other beta men, and like it's the idea that like the beta brotherhood is like a hyper masculine space. And so it's I always just find it curious to know if you got any kind of like hesitation or fallback from people knowing that you do drag.
I don't think so. There are people like again, I'm not really on the app so much, so and I haven't been for a few years, so
Yeah, but I'm
it's
talking about like Twitter and like the OnlyFans.
well, right, but I mean, I haven't experienced any negative feedback from people knowing that I do drag on there, but it's also like I don't really broadcast it. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
that people come to my Twitter to see like a hot, sweaty, bearded dude like wearing a jockstrap and you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, so
I
basically, you know your audience.
I think so. Like, and I get that consistency is what people are expecting when they look at my Twitter and my OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Um, Certainly, if somebody like offered me a certain amount of money, like, and said, "Hey, I want to see you dressed up in drag doing this and this," I'd be like, "Okay, cool, let's make it happen."
Yeah.
Um, but literally, like, it if I want to feel like good in drag, it will take me like 3 hours to get in drag. So it's not like me just being horny after work one day and being like, oh, I'm gonna like sniff on my pits and like rub my dick and like touch my butt. Like it would be a lot more, you know what I mean? It would be a lot more involved than that. So it puts
Yeah,
me in a
yeah,
different mindset.
yeah.
You know,
It's
it's a
funny.
lot. It's a lot more like primal and natural for me to feel turned on by being completely naked and not having like 5 pounds of makeup on.
Are you doing drag now with this look that you got going on?
Like this,
Yeah, yeah,
this is
yeah.
drag, honey.
Oh,
This
I'm sorry.
is drag.
I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no. I'm kidding. I mean, I'm kidding, but I'm not.
No, but
Like
I know you're not kidding, but like I'm talking about like
bearded,
no, I'm talking
hairy
about
drag.
well, yeah, because I see like on your Instagram, you're like mostly shaved and like looking cute.
Mostly, but then also if you
Both
look at
hilarious.
the time frames, those are like years ago.
Yeah,
um so yeah, like I haven't really shaved my beard in about a year at this point, and I
yeah.
have done drag plentifully like with a beard on.
Cool.
And I do prefer to paint my face without a beard, but I love having a beard day to day and I like being hairy. And I also think a lot of people are excited by seeing a hairy body like express femininity like that. I think that's liberating in a way.
Yeah, I find it more um like your generation of like the young boys coming up in the game to find it more like I feel like it's much more desired. It's a very different when I talk to young like babe bros, it's very different experiences from when I was like kind of discovering my sexuality and like what that world looked like in terms of like the media that was being thrown at us. Um,
Mm.
you know, all the information that we're getting in these gay spaces is completely different than what I've known today. And it's fascinating to me to be like to speak to someone that's so accepting, because I feel like you boys are like pretty accepting now.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully we were brought up with the internet, and that democratizes a lot of, you know what I
Right,
mean? Like
right,
a lot of
right.
different people can share their experiences and stuff, and media a lot more these days like shares a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that I'm sorry, I have this thought because I get a lot of like
Yeah.
older baiter men that when they see y'all, they get really intimidated and they're just like, oh, like I can't, like I'm too old to be sexy, or I'm too this, I can't do that. And I'm just like, well, see, that's where you have to kind of change your mentality. Like it's about recognizing that these young boys exist and it should like inspire you to want that in yourself. But I think there's a disconnect between like you as a personality being like unobtainable, which I mean you could be, but like in terms of access to you, that's like
Mm,
that's what you do, right? That's you engage and you're like talking to your audience because you're
I
on
do,
social
yeah.
media.
Yeah, that's something I really love. I mean, I'm certainly I know like when I was first looking at Twitter for porn, like I definitely was just kind of lurking in the background and like wanted to find sexy guys to jerk off to, and like I think that's totally fine. I know I have I have a lot of followers, and I'm sure a lot of them just like don't care to engage with me, and that's fine. But I love that engagement. I love when people send me messages and, want to talk about like, oh, hey, like I loved watching this video. I loved this and that. And I love talking to people. That's what's inspired me about Twitter is
Yeah,
that it's not just a one-sided me putting this out there and that's it. Like
yeah,
it's a social network. It's something
yeah.
where I'm socializing with these pictures that I'm and videos that I'm sending out and like text or whatever.
And you must get like so much, you must get like a wide variety of people. It's not like it's specific. I mean, maybe like a certain percentage is like a majority of your audience, but like you must get so many people following your stuff. I mean, that's a great thing about like porn and like um sexual
That
expression.
self,
Like
yeah, it does.
well, no, it does, but my point that I was trying to make was that there's so much sex out there. There's room for everyone, and you could be
Yes,
attracted to all these different things because they exist.
right.
Um, but I think it's important, equally important for like people like yourself. Well, can I call you a sex worker? Is that fair to
Yeah,
say? Yeah.
yeah,
So that sex work, popular sex workers, like verbally, or people hear that or see it through media and say, "Hey, like I enjoy like all types of different men," because then all types of different men can be like, "Oh, he really enjoys me," you know?
oh yeah, and that's definitely the case for me. And I wouldn't leave that at just men either.
Right.
I enjoy a lot of different people.
Right.
Um, yeah, so hit me up, hit me up. Tell me what you like. Tell me that. Yeah,
Yeah, in a pretty piggy, he'll show you a good time. he's
for
super
sure.
he's super sweet. Um, yeah, and that's the thing that irks me about like these popular like OnlyFans like porn actors, because you know that you can definitely tell they cater to a certain demographic and they're kind of staying in that lane. And I think it's really important that sex workers have that conversation.
Yeah,
I don't know how authentic it would be or how real it would be coming from them if they truly believe that, or it's just a business. But I find
right.
it really inspiring when people are just inclusive. I think, but you know, it takes a certain type. It takes a certain type of person to do that. Not everyone's capable of being that inclusive.
Yeah, I guess so. I say that with a bit of shade because
I know, I get it.
there have been points in my life where I've been less inclusive, and the more that I've engaged with different people, I'm like, oh, we all just kind of want love and acceptance and to share things with each other and like feel like we're all on the same earth, you know?
Yeah,
Um, but like you said, I mean, yeah, there are some very popular, successful online sex workers or whatever, like people that have huge followings on OnlyFans, and it's the content that they create that people come to see, and like you know, I respect that for them. I don't think they necessarily have to talk to everybody. Like I don't talk to everybody that sends me a message, but like I do enjoy that.
Yeah.
But like, you know, there's some people that they're doing a job, they're jerking off, putting it online. They want people to consume that content and pay for it. And, you know, all the power to them. And they might have different relationships outside of their sex work where they have these deep relationships, and maybe that's just something that they're not interested in. But I think you're right, though. I think it's important for people to talk about, you know, every sex worker, first of all, is not the same.
Right.
Everybody that's putting their body online, like, is still a person behind that. I mean, sure, there might be bots that are posting random people. Like, that's definitely something to look out for. But there's humans behind these images that we're all consuming on social media. And sometimes those people are open and want to talk, and sometimes they're not. And even my own personality like can change from day to day whether I want to engage with people that much or not. Like sometimes I'll go days or even a week without posting anything because I just might not feel that sexy for that week or something.
Yeah, that's
um
fair. Yeah, you don't always
I
have
feel
to
like I kind
be.
of like really went off there, but you know what I mean?
No, that's good. I feel like, preach. You got something to say. You're a smart guy. You got a voice and use it. It's all perspective. I mean, I always try to remember that, experience isn't shared. My experience is completely different from like your experience. And so, I mean, I'm not like, I try to do it for a quick minute, and for me personally, like there was a disconnect between what I was showing and what I was trying to communicate. I'm here on a mission. Like I understand it now. It's happening to me now, and I never thought I'd be in this position where I'm now. My life is kind of like this pathway of like I'm going in the direction in which I'm trying to serve. Like I'm trying to bring my experience and say, hey, like these are things that you can, you know, th- these are tools that you can implement in your everyday sexual life.
Hell yeah.
Um,
Which
but
I'm so that you do that, because I've learned a lot from engaging with your content, listening to your podcast. Like I'm so thankful that you share those things. In being a solo sexual person, like I'm excited by all these things that I'm doing with myself, but I also very much want to cast a net out to bring in people who that where my stuff makes them feel good, or that inspires them, or they feel the same ways that I do, or maybe they realize that they're turned on by themselves in similar ways that I'm turned on by myself.
yeah,
And I think that's a great conversation to have with people. It's endlessly rewarding. It makes us feel good about ourselves, makes us feel good in community. um
yeah.
yeah.
And I think that's what's so empowering too about OnlyFans and Just for Fans. Like now, like we're no longer being dictated by these big studios of what they think we think is sexy. Like we're taking
Yes.
that ownership back, and so
And
I think that's why.
not
Mhm.
even just OnlyFans and Just for Fans, but like Twitter and Tumblr too. Like just these social medias where people have the ability, the space to like share their bodies and their sex and like what they think is hot. Like that democratization versus back in the day when all people had was like Hustler magazine or whatever, where all they saw was one specific type of body.
Yeah,
you know like
yeah,
we're so fortunate that now we live in a world, and of course there's problems with it. Like the algorithm definitely buries certain bodies and like people who are people of color and shit. But we're fortunate to be able to like be online, where things are a little more democratic with
yeah,
a lower community.
yeah. No, that's great. I love social media. I'm a huge advocate of social media. I think you should just use it for. I mean, it has its intended uses. So if you're either going to be positive about it or you're going to be negative about it, you can choose to shape it however you want. And I'm always encouraging baiters to get online. I mean, that's what I did. I feel like I was late in the game, and then for some reason I just didn't think, oh, like of course we'd be on social media. Like, it's
Right.
so obvious that we'd be there. And it's really great to be able to engage and then form friendships.
Yes.
I didn't realize that, and then it just was like I just didn't understand it. It was like, oh, maybe I'm too old for this shit. I was like past my prime. But no, it's easy. It's intuitive.
It's so
And,
cool.
and anybody can do it.
Yeah, for sure.
What's your future like in terms of like sex work and like all things sexy? Like, do you continue? Like, do you feel like you want to continue on this path? Like, what's going on with you?
Yeah, I do. I'm really inspired by people who exclusively use sex work like to create their lives. I think that consensual exchange of like my sex for whatever amount of money, I think that's awesome compared to my current job that pays the bills where I work at a restaurant and I oftentimes have to serve people who I do not think are worthy of my service. Generally, the place where I work brings in like a white, conservative, older crowd. I live in Georgia. Like I work at a fancy restaurant, and the people who have access to pay for that type of experience are by and large conservative Republicans. And I don't feel like the service that I'm giving to them, I would rather be putting that energy into like so many other things.
Got it.
So
Got it. Got it.
yeah, so definitely moving forward, like I see myself hopefully sustaining myself like through sex work, whether that be online or whatever else. I also have to recognize and have to um, I just have to recognize the fact that currently I'm able to use sex work in a very conditional way. Like it's not something that I have to survive off of because a lot of people who do sex work, it's not something that they necessarily like. It's not a luxury for them. Like it's
Mm.
something that they have to survive off of. So I think just taking that to heart and like, you know, just being careful of like of how I'm doing it and like making sure that I'm doing it ethically to me is a very important part of it. Because I don't want to be taking food out of anybody else's like mouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And I think it's really smart that you engage in sex work that way. Again, like I just feel like it communicates through whatever you're doing. So, great. I'm happy that you'll continue to do that. I'm so excited to see the evolution of where you go from here. I feel like it can only get better. It's pretty great now.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm so thankful for all of the people who have it's just wild to me like it's been less than a year and like all these people follow me and engage with my posts and I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah.
So thank you anybody who's listening who follows me and yeah, like thank you so fucking much and I hope that I turn you on.
Okay, cool. I feel like that's a really good end to this podcast. That's perfect.
Well,
Um,
thanks, Joe. Thanks
yeah,
for having me.
of course. Thank you so much for joining me tonight and having a conversation about masturbation and soul sexuality. I think you're a cool bait bro, and I know that we're going to keep in touch for sure. So y'all can follow Pretty Piggy over on Twitter. His handle is at Prettypiggy19. That is the number 1 and 9. Also, do you want to give out your Instagram? Should I do that?
Yeah, I think it's the same on Instagram. I think it's also Prettypiggy19. I'm definitely a lot more active on Twitter. I'm
Yeah.
also on Bait World. I'm on Bait World as Prettypiggy19.
Are you really? Oh my god, I'm gonna add you right now.
Yeah, let me just drop that bomb at the end of the podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
to
I
be
didn't.
honest, like I don't use it that much, but like I do use Bait World. Like I am on there.
Okay, I'm gonna add you. That's cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, surprise.
Surprise. And surprise to you all bros out there. So thanks again for tuning into this episode. We enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks again, Pretty Piggy. And I will catch you on the next episode. Bye. He's holding up a peace sign.
I know, yeah. I guess you can't see that. That's a peace sign. Yeah, peace.